Hello and welcome. Before we begin, kindly subscribe if you enjoy heartfelt stories. Share in the comments where you're watching from and how your day is going. I truly value your presence here. They dressed me in silence, sat me near the kitchen, and called it love. No speech, no seat at the table, just a paper plate and a plastic fork. I smiled. I swallowed every bruise like I always did, but they didn't know. The house they live in, the car they drive, the life they built, it's all mine. And tonight, they crossed a line I won't step back from. I arrived 2 days before the wedding. The air in Charlotte was thick with heat, that sticky southern kind that made my blouse cling to my back the moment I stepped off the plane. David hadn't come to meet me. He'd sent a car service, not even a taxi, a town car with a silent man in mirrored sunglasses who held a sign that said, Ms. Ellis. That should have told me everything, but of course, I smiled politely, tipped too much, and said, thank you like I always do. The house looked the same as in the pictures, except now it had balloons tied to the porch rail and a banner that read, Love Wins, in gold script. Inside, it smelled like citrus cleaner and expensive candles. I was greeted by Ashley. No, Ava. No, right, her name's Brianna. That girl's got the warmth of a marble countertop. She hugged me with one arm like she was afraid I might break or shed glitter on her dress. Oh, good, she said, glancing at her phone. You made it. We weren't sure which flight you'd pick. As if we hadn't talked last week, as if I hadn't emailed the details twice. David finally came down the stairs, all clean-shaven and flushed, like a kid playing dress-up in a grown man's shirt. He smiled the way he always does when he wants to smooth things over before they get bumpy. Hey, Mom, he said, and kissed my cheek. His eyes didn't quite meet mine. They put me in the guest house. It's quieter out there, Brianna said, like she was doing me a favor. And the main bedrooms are already organized. I knew what that meant. Her sorority sisters and old roommates were taking up space in the house I'd partly paid for. David had called me 3 years ago, said they were tight on the mortgage. I sent him $20,000. I didn't ask questions. That's what mothers do, right? The guest house was a converted garage, hot, musty, and the ceiling fan sounded like it was chewing gravel. No bathroom. I'd have to walk back into the main house to use the facilities. But I didn't complain. I set my suitcase on the floral armchair, changed into my sandals, and went to the kitchen to offer help. Brianna was there with her mother, a slim woman in pressed linen who looked me up and down like I was the help. We've got the caterers coming in the morning, she said. But if you want to bake something, that's sweet. I said I'd make my lemon cake, David's favorite since he was 8. Brianna raised an eyebrow. Oh, we already ordered 3 cakes, but you can make it for the rehearsal dinner staff, maybe? That night I baked in silence, the kitchen too warm, the timer ticking like a bomb. I used the same recipe card I've had for decades, the one stained with David's chocolate fingerprints. When I opened the fridge to chill the frosting, there was no room, filled with vegan hors d'oeuvres and champagne bottles with custom labels. D and B forever. I made space. I always do. The next morning was worse. Brianna didn't like the color of the cardigan I picked. It's a little somber, she said, her tone sugary with threat. This is a celebration. I held back the urge to say I wore this same cardigan the day I buried my husband, not because I was grieving, but because it made me feel strong. I changed into something lighter. Pastel. I looked like a mint on a pillow. At brunch, I offered to make a toast. Just a small one, I said. A story about David when he was little. Brianna's lips stiffened. We're keeping speeches short, she said. We want to keep things upbeat. You understand David didn't say a word, just swirled his mimosa and looked out the window. Then came the moment with the cake. I'd left mine on the side table, still warm, covered with a linen towel. Brianna's friend, the one in the backless dress, lifted the towel and said, "Oh my God, who brought this?" She laughed. Did someone's grandma think this was a potluck? Everyone laughed. I smiled. I didn't say it was mine. When the florist arrived, she was missing the hydrangeas. I offered a suggestion. Brianna turned on me so fast it felt like a slap. "Please, can we just stick to the plan?" she snapped. "We've got this under control." David murmured, "Mom, maybe just let them handle it." And just like that, I was the problem. That evening, I stood in the kitchen with a cup of tea, looking out the window at the string lights they'd hung over the yard. The same yard where I'd pulled weeds last summer when David threw out his back. The same porch I'd helped paint. It wasn't just distance I felt now. It was eviction. They didn't want a mother. They wanted a prop. Still, I smiled when people looked. Still, I said thank you. Still, I folded napkins and stayed quiet. Because that's what we do, right? We don't ruin weddings. We don't make scenes. We make lemon cake. We sit outside the frame. We make space. Always. The morning of the wedding came too bright, too hot, and too loud. There was shouting upstairs about someone's lashes, someone else's missing tie. I sat on the edge of the bed in the guest house, my coffee gone cold beside me, hands folded neatly in my lap like I was waiting for an interview. No one had knocked. No one had checked on me. I'd been told to be ready by 10. It was past 9:30. I'd put on my navy blue dress, the one I'd had tailored to hide the swelling in my knees. My shoes pinched, but they made me feel presentable. Solid, at least. I'd curled my hair the night before, carefully, so I wouldn't take up bathroom space in the morning. I'd even packed bobby pins, though I hadn't used them in years. At 10:15, someone finally remembered me. A girl I didn't recognize, clipboard, headset, tight bun, poked her head in and said, "They're already gathering. Can you head to the main house?" I nodded. She didn't wait. Inside, chaos bloomed like spilled champagne. Brianna stood near the window, looking like a lifestyle blogger's fever dream, all silk and teeth. Her makeup was too perfect. People moved around her like she was some kind of starfish stuck in the center of a tide pool. I walked up, ready to offer a quiet, "You look beautiful," when she caught sight of me and said, "Oh, good. Can you stay out of the family shots for now? We're doing immediate family first." She didn't even blink. Immediate family. I stood there, nodding like a damn bobblehead, while her mother wrapped her in a satin shawl for the camera. David walked in just after that, adjusted his cufflinks, looked straight through me. He was glowing. That was the worst part. I'd never seen him so alive. "You look nice, Mom," he said, like a footnote. "Try to sit near the aisle. They'll want you to walk in after the bridesmaids." Brianna turned, eyes narrowed. "Actually, we changed that. She'll be seated already." Their photographer chimed in, "It's better flow, trust me." The ceremony was held in the backyard under an arch of eucalyptus and blush roses. Folding chairs on manicured grass, white parasols for the guests. I sat alone on the end of the second row, where the sun hit hardest, my dress absorbing the heat. The front row was full. Her parents, siblings, even a cousin from Boston who had a lisp and spoke like he invented furniture. No place for me. I folded my hands again. During the vows, Brianna said something about building a life from scratch, together, without leaning on anyone else's path. That one hit hard. David looked at her like she'd hung the moon. I looked down at my shoes. When it ended, people clapped like it was a Broadway curtain call. Music played. Waiters passed champagne. Someone asked if I was part of the bride's staff. I smiled, said nothing. I've learned silence makes people more uncomfortable than any correction ever could. Then came the reception. White tent, chandeliers, a band that played folksy covers of pop songs. I wandered in, scanning the name cards on the tables. No Helen Ellis. I checked again. Nothing. I found the planner. "I think there might have been a mistake with the seating." She blinked. "Oh, you must be Mrs. Ellis. I was told you'd be helping in the back." I laughed. Out loud. not politely. Just a single hard exhale. Helping? I asked. Like, kitchen staff? She looked flustered. I was just told. I turned. And there he was. David. In his tuxedo, hair slicked back, drink in hand, smile crooked. Mom, he said, walking over. Brianna thought it'd be better if you sat near the back, where it's quieter. You hate noise. He looked pleased with himself, like he'd just invented compassion. And we thought maybe you could help keep things moving with the servers. You're so good with people. I stared at him. You want me to work your wedding? He winced. No, not work. Just be helpful. I took a step back. My feet ached. My chest felt tight. I looked toward the tent. Inside, her family laughed, clinked glasses, posed for photos. My lemon cake wasn't anywhere in sight. You want me to pretend I'm not your mother. His smile faltered. Don't make this a thing, okay? It's not about you. That was the moment. Right there. Not a scream. Not a slap. Just that line. Soft and final. Like closing a lid. I nodded. Of course, I said. Wouldn't want to make a scene. They set me up in the catering area. A metal folding chair next to a plastic cooler full of wine bottles. Someone handed me a paper plate with a roll and a scoop of cold pasta salad. I ate it with a plastic fork. No one came to check on me. No one noticed I was gone. I sat there for an hour, maybe more. Then I got up, walked out the back, past the string lights and giggling bridesmaids, past the gravel path and the parked cars. I didn't cry. I didn't even shake. I just walked until I hit the guest house. I packed in under 10 minutes, left the dress hanging in the closet, took my phone, my charger, my wallet. On the way out, I slipped off the silver bracelet David had given me last Mother's Day, the one that said, "Best Mom Ever," and left it on the nightstand. Then I stepped outside into the hot night air, locked the door behind me, and called my lawyer. The dial tone barely rang once before Martin picked up. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year, not since I helped him settle an estate for my late sister's husband. Helen, he said, confused by the hour. Everything okay? I stared at the moonlight stretched across the gravel driveway like someone had painted a road just for me. I need to revoke a power of attorney, I said, effective immediately. And I want to block any access David Ellis has to any financial, legal, or property documents. Can you do that first thing tomorrow? Martin paused. What happened? Start the paperwork, I said. I'll fill you in later. The Uber driver didn't ask questions, just nodded when I said, airport hotel, and helped with my suitcase. I didn't cry in the car. I didn't even sigh. My face was blank, a still pond over deep, disturbed water. By the time I got to the hotel, it was close to midnight. I checked in, declined the breakfast voucher, and took a shower hot enough to scald. Lying in bed, my skin still damp, I stared at the ceiling and thought, they really put me in the kitchen. They really looked at me, the woman who paid for his tuition, who loaned them money when her own savings were thin, who co-signed the mortgage, and said, "Can you stay out of the frame?" At 8:01 the next morning, I called the bank, froze every shared account, requested new cards, canceled the automatic monthly payment I'd been making to help with their student loans. That was never repaid. I told the woman on the phone, very calmly, "Please note in my file that no one, and I mean no one, is authorized to speak for me anymore." She asked, "Should I file this as a change in legal representation?" "File it under redefinition," I said. By 10, Martin had emailed me a stack of forms. By noon, I was at a notary, signing them. Each signature steadied my hand a little more. In the afternoon, I called the county recorder's office. I still legally owned a 51% stake in the Charlotte house. We'd set it up that way years ago, just in case, though David had begged me to make it full ownership after the wedding. It's just paperwork, Mom. Nothing changes. Turns out, he was wrong. I told the clerk I wanted to file a temporary hold on any property transaction related to the house. There's an intent to sell filed last week, she said, flipping pages. Looks like it was scheduled to finalize in 5 days. I nearly laughed. He was going to sell the house out from under me, probably to fund the honeymoon. Or to invest in their future, as Brianna liked to say when she was spending someone else's money. Put a block on it, I said. Now. That evening, I made a list. It wasn't long. Just 4 items. Call CPA, close joint investments, draft new will, find a place that's mine. I didn't call David. I didn't explain. I didn't offer a warning or a second chance. He knew what he'd done. Or worse, he didn't think it mattered. Back home in Wisconsin 2 days later, I walked into my little house and was struck by the quiet. Not the emptiness kind. The safe kind. The floors creaked where they always did. The kitchen smelled faintly of the cinnamon soap I liked. No one was there asking me to move out of the way, or to keep things upbeat, or to make myself smaller for their comfort. I made tea, sat at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and started transferring funds from our family trust into an account with only my name on it. Then I called a realtor. Not to sell. Not yet. Just to ask, what could I get for my half of a house in Charlotte, North Carolina, if I decided to walk away entirely? The number she gave me wasn't life-changing, but it was enough. I emailed Martin, told him to begin drafting a dissolution clause. I wanted my stake liquidated. If they wanted the house so bad, they could buy me out. Every last inch. That night, I sat on my porch with a blanket around my shoulders and watched the streetlight flicker through the trees. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was hollowed out in the way trees are after lightning. Blackened, but still standing. I thought about that folding chair by the catering tent, the plastic cup, the cold pasta salad, my son walking away like he didn't come from my body. And I said quietly out loud, not again. Not ever again. The following week, I wrote 2 letters. One to David, one to Brianna. I didn't send them. Not yet. I just needed to see the words out of my head and on paper. Needed to hear my own voice without interruption, without being told I was too sensitive, or taking things personally. David's letter was longer. It started with the night I stayed up sewing the tear in his prom suit, because he didn't tell me until the morning of. It mentioned the scraped knees I kissed, the stomach bugs I cleaned off his sheets, the time I pawned my wedding ring to cover his freshman housing deposit. I wrote about the loan he never repaid, the birthday dinners I cooked alone when he canceled last minute, the quiet way I made space again and again while he pretended none of it ever cost me anything. Brianna's letter was shorter, colder. I told her that sometimes cruelty wears a smile and calls itself efficiency. That entitlement doesn't look like a tantrum. Sometimes it looks like a seating chart that erases a woman's name. I told her the most dangerous kind of arrogance is the kind that forgets who built the floor it's standing on. I printed both, folded them, slid them into envelopes, then tucked them in the back of my file drawer next to my passport. I didn't need revenge. I needed clarity. Martin called with an update. The household had gone through. They couldn't sell it, not without my signature, and they'd received formal notice. Their realtor was confused, he said. Apparently they told her it was already signed over. Of course they did. I could see Brianna in her tailored blouse, sipping an iced matcha, saying things like, "Oh, it's just a formality. His mom gave it to us years ago." Entitlement always walks like it owns the room. I gave Martin the green light to move forward with the split. If they want to keep it, they'll need to pay me out in full, I said. Otherwise, we put it on the market. The next day, I received a voice message. David. His tone wasn't angry. Worse, it was exhausted, like he was the one being burdened. Mom, can you please stop? You're making this so much harder than it needs to be. We just want to move forward. This was supposed to be a happy time. I didn't reply. A few hours later, Brianna emailed me. The subject line read, "Let's be adults." The body of the message was 4 paragraphs of polished condescension. "We're disappointed that you chose to pursue legal action. This could have been resolved within the family. We've always tried to include you." She even wrote, "I'm sorry you felt excluded," which is the verbal equivalent of patting someone on the head and pushing them down the stairs. I closed the email and moved it to the trash. Instead, I drove to the office of a local women's nonprofit. I walked in, asked to speak to someone about setting up a private donation. They offered me coffee and asked me what kind of legacy I wanted to leave. I smiled and said, "One that doesn't end in the kitchen." We set up a fund. In my name. Half the value of the Charlotte house, once liquidated, would go to grants for women over 60 starting over after divorce, widowhood, or betrayal. "That's very specific," the woman said kindly. "You'd be surprised how common it is," I replied. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just signed the forms. That evening, I opened my email. A note from the county alert system said someone had tried to file a renovation permit on the Charlotte property. The names listed were David Ellis and Brianna Ellis. Renovation? After all this? My name still on the deed? They weren't just trying to cut me out. They were trying to erase me completely, paint over me, rebuild on top of my bones. I sent the alert to Martin with one line: "Block anything they try." Then I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on the couch, and opened a real estate site in Arizona. I'd always dreamed of the desert, not for the cacti or the sunsets, but for the silence. The wide open air where no one expected you to apologize for taking up space. I found a condo, small, clean, with a balcony that faced west. I bookmarked it. Before bed, I pulled the letters out from the drawer. Reread them. Still didn't send them. I didn't need them to know how I felt. I just needed them to know I wasn't done. The call came 3 days later. I was on the phone with a leasing agent in Tucson, discussing move-in dates for the condo I'd been eyeing, when my cell buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. An hour later, a text arrived. From Brianna. "You're playing dirty. Don't think this ends with a signature." No punctuation. No, "Hi." Just a warning, as flat as her tone that day at the wedding. I stared at the screen for a moment, then took a screenshot and forwarded it to Martin. "Add this to the file," I wrote. "I think she's starting to spiral." He called me within 10 minutes. "Want me to send a cease and desist?" "No," I said. "Let's see how ugly she wants to get." I should have known she wouldn't stop at words. That evening, after a quiet walk and a stop at the grocery store, I came home to find the door to my place slightly ajar. Not wide open, just enough to send a chill up my spine. I paused on the threshold. My keys were still in my hand. I hadn't left in a hurry. Something wasn't right. Inside, it wasn't destruction. It was precision. Controlled. My mail was scattered on the floor. My laptop had been moved. A drawer in my bedroom was half open. My old wedding ring, which I hadn't worn in 20 years but kept in a little dish near the mirror, was gone. So was a flash drive with my scanned legal documents. It wasn't a robbery. It was a message. I didn't call David. I didn't call the neighbors. I called the police. The officers were polite but not hopeful. "No sign of forced entry," one said, scribbling in a notepad. "Do you think it was someone you know?" I said nothing, just gave him the name of my lawyer. Let them draw their own lines. But I knew. I changed the locks that night, slept with a lamp on, didn't sleep much at all. 2 nights later, it escalated. I was coming home from an art supply store. I'd started sketching again, something I hadn't done since the early 90s, when 2 men stepped out from behind the bushes by the complex entrance. No masks, no weapons, just bold eyes and clenched fists. "Why'd you do it, huh?" one of them said. "He's your son." The other one shoved me. Hard. I fell back against the brick, hit my elbow, my hip. Pain shot up my side like fire. You ruined his life, the first one muttered. For what? A power trip? A neighbor saw. A porch light snapped on. The men took off. Someone called 911. I remember the ambulance lights. The chill of the gurney. A medic asking me if I had allergies while I blinked against the brightness of the ceiling tiles. In the ER, a doctor said I had a fractured wrist, bruised ribs, and a mild concussion. Nothing life-threatening. You're lucky, he said. It could have been worse. He didn't know how wrong he was. Because this was the worst. Not the fall. Not the bruises. Not the crack of bone. It was knowing that my own son had married a woman who saw me as disposable, and that he either didn't stop her or didn't care to. That night, I lay in the hospital bed, the IV beeping gently beside me, and decided, enough. No more waiting. No more second chances. No more quiet. I called Martin the next morning. We're filing charges, I said. All of them. Criminal? He asked. Civil? Both. And then I added, because I needed to hear it aloud. I gave them a home. I gave them money. I gave them my silence. And they turned it into a weapon. Now I'll give them the consequence. He was quiet for a beat. Then he said, understood. By the time they discharged me, I had a restraining order in progress, a court date on the calendar, and a fire in my chest that felt like survival. I went home, sat on my couch, looked at my sketch pad, still untouched. Then I picked up my phone and began a new search. Civil litigation attorney, Arizona, aggressive. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was building a case. The attorney I hired was named Rebecca Lynn, mid-30s, sharp as glass, and not interested in emotional speeches. I need everything, she said during our first meeting. Every email, every transaction, every voicemail, text, photo, anything that shows a pattern of coercion, financial manipulation, or harassment. Especially the incident, she said, the incident, like it was a traffic ticket. I admired that. I gave her everything I had. In court, it didn't matter that David was my son. It didn't matter that Brianna had once sent me flowers on Mother's Day, or that I'd baked their engagement party cake from scratch. What mattered was the paper trail, and I had it. The recordings, the texts, the voicemail from the day before the attack, where Brianna's voice hissed, "Don't think this ends with a signature." The bank records that showed how they'd siphoned money from our joint account before the wedding without notice. The emails about the attempted home renovation without my consent. The fact that the two men who pushed me had also done some light contracting for Brianna's cousin just months prior. One of them flipped during deposition. He didn't even blink when asked who paid him. She said it was just to scare her. Said the old lady needed a wake-up call. He said it like he was reading from a shopping list. I sat in the courtroom every day, wrist in a brace, suit pressed, hair neatly pinned. Not a victim. A witness. A woman who'd finally run out of room to make herself smaller. David didn't testify. He sat behind Brianna like a ghost, eyes sunken, suit rumpled, silent. When our eyes met once, briefly, he looked down. I didn't. The verdict came after 3 days of deliberation. The court ruled in my favor. Damages awarded, civil penalties for harassment and emotional distress, a restraining order upheld, and an injunction against either of them attempting contact through any medium. I was to be repaid the full value of my stake in the house, plus legal costs. Outside the courthouse, a local reporter caught me walking to my car. "Mrs. Ellis, do you have any comment?" she asked. I paused, looked right into the camera lens. "You don't always get to choose your family," I said, "but you do get to choose what you allow." Then I got into my car and drove away. Weeks passed. I finalized the condo purchase in Tucson. I shipped only what mattered: a few paintings, my books, One old cast iron pan. The rest I left behind. I wasn't starting over. I was starting. The condo was small but bright. The balcony caught every drop of golden light in the evening. I painted the front door myself. Yellow. Loud, unapologetic yellow. I started volunteering at a local women's center, met women who had lost far more than I had, and some who were just learning that they were allowed to want more. I told them what I'd learned late. There is no virtue in letting people walk on you just because they share your name. One day, the center director asked if I'd consider speaking at a fundraiser. "Your story's powerful," she said. I agreed. I wrote a speech titled, "The Day They Put Me in the Kitchen." The night of the event, I stood in front of a crowd of over 100 people, professionals, retirees, survivors, and I told them about the folding chair, the paper plate, the silence that swallowed a lifetime of sacrifice. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Afterward, people lined up to thank me. One woman said, "I wish my mother had fought back." Another, "I've been waiting to hear someone say this out loud." Later that week, I got an email from a publisher. "Are you writing a book?" they asked. "Because you should be." Maybe I will, but not out of anger. Not anymore. Out of record. Out of reminder. The last thing I did before shutting my laptop that night was send a postcard to the old Charlotte address. No return address. No message. Just a photo of the desert, endless, burning, alive, and 5 bold printed words. "I am not yours anymore."